What is up, everybody? Seth here with Ganza Media, and today I'm going to be telling you 7 things you cannot miss when traveling to one of my favorite places on the planet, Yucatan, Mexico. Not the entire Yucatan Peninsula, I'm talking about just the state, Yucatan. So the whole peninsula is comprised of the Mexican states of Campeche, Yucatan itself, Quintana Roo, that's a really hard word to say. Us gringos like to just say Quintana Roo. As well as portions of Belize and Guatemala. That's the entire peninsula. If I was going to do a video on all of it, it would be a very long video and I would probably miss a ton of places because there's so much to see and do in the whole peninsula. Even though a lot of the attractions on the peninsula are very similar, there are some insane differences that are like night and day. For instance, the city of Cancun was founded in like 1970 and it was pretty much just built for tourism. Like tourism is the entire industry there. There's no real history and culture of its own that makes it unique. Still cool in its own way, but meanwhile, just a few hours away in Yucatan, you have centuries old colonial cities. Number 1 on my list is the colonial city of Valladolid. It's got a perfect central location in the state of Yucatan. It's really closely located to a lot of like the big ticket cenotes. And if you aren't familiar with cenotes, basically they are, well, I'll back up. So the Yucatan Peninsula doesn't have any above ground rivers at all, but it does have one of the world's largest underground river systems, if not the largest. Only portions of it are exposed. So basically what has happened is like the limestone rock above this river system in different parts has collapsed, and what's revealed is this oftentimes crystal clear blue water. There's these dramatic walls around them, vines growing down into them, trees growing down into them. They all look different, and there's literally thousands of them in the Yucatan Peninsula. But Valladolid is a very good central spot to check a lot of those out. Some of the really popular ones are located 30 minutes or less from the city. They also have a cenote right in the city center of Valladolid. It's called Cenote Zaki. There they have like a restaurant overlooking it, and for the equivalent of like $1.30, you can go get in there and spend all day or as long as you want to swimming in that cenote or snorkeling. Valladolid itself is really a special place. It's very colonial, and you have like tons of mopeds, bicyclists. The streets are active and alive, and you have all this colonial architecture, and a lot of it has been converted into hotels, Airbnbs, restaurants, museums. And outside they don't look like all that much. They're just colorful, but once you get inside there'll be like gardens and all this stuff. There's delicious cuisine. There's a very lively city center, tons of stunning architecture, and a pretty good amount of rooftop cafes. So Valladolid is just a great place to base yourself. And we rented a moped and went to a bunch of different cenotes and things like that. So that's really cool. They also have a bee park in Valladolid where you can go check out different species of bees in the area. And they have a really unique accommodation option if you don't want to stay in one of the colonial houses, where you can actually go stay in an old Volkswagen Beetle that's been converted into an accommodation. And if you don't know, Volkswagen Beetles are like iconic in Mexico. They're honestly more Mexican than they are German at this point. So that's a really cool way to experience that culture in a different type of way. The only con to visiting Valladolid is you're going to be stopping so much for pictures and things like that because the town is so picturesque at almost every corner.
All right, we got our marquesitas.
Yes.
Ready?
Mine broke.
We got a broken marquesita.
So number 2 on my list is sort of an interchangeable option. It depends on what time of year you're visiting. So either Celestun or Rio Lagartos. Both are small coastal towns in Yucatan that are famous for their flamingo watching. The birds will spend part of the year in Rio Lagartos, and the other part of the year, thousands will congregate in Celestun. It depends on like if it's their feeding season or their mating season. So if you're visiting from December to April, you're gonna wanna go to Celestun. And if you're visiting from like March through June, you're gonna wanna go to Rio Lagartos. Personally, I was stoked to go to Celestun. It's a very small fishing town. It didn't feel very touristy. We were able to get really cheap accommodation there because it's less touristy. We stayed on the beach for like $30 a night, and our Airbnb was equipped with hammocks, which is really cool because that's a huge part of the culture in Yucatan, is a ton of people sleep in hammocks instead of beds. I'll put a link in the description to that Airbnb. That was a cool experience. But Celestun in general was just a fun, walkable little town. And also there was like tuk-tuk drivers in the city center, and we hired one of them to take us to an old abandoned hacienda that's supposedly haunted. And that hacienda actually crossed into the Campeche state. It was really cool. Like we took a little dirt road on a tuk-tuk down to the hacienda, and there was water on all sides of us. It was a really cool experience, and we were the only ones out there. And also Celestun is close to the small beach town of Cecil, which is really gaining a lot of popularity with tourists lately. I personally haven't been there yet. The only downside of Celestun is that because it's not very touristy, boat tours to go out and see the flamingos are kind of expensive if you're not combining it with other people. I think we paid like $75 for a boat tour that lasted several hours, but it was a lot of fun, and it included like mangrove swamp tour, and our boat captain was super flexible. He even went over the time, and we were just able to sort of decide what we wanted to do. It really was like a National Geographic type experience because we didn't get too close to flamingos, we didn't harass them, and after about 5 minutes they completely forgot we were there, and we just got to watch them do what they would normally do, like their day-to-day habits. But if you are visiting in the part of year where all the flamingos go to Rio Lagartos, it's definitely not a bad option either. It's a bit more popular, so you'll probably have cheaper options to go on the boat tours, and also it's famous for its like pink salt lakes. But what a lot of people don't realize is that Celestun actually has some of the similar pink salt lakes in the area as well. And honestly, the pink salt lakes are really not very cool. Like if you've seen the Instagram pictures and videos of people like laying in them all dramatically or walking through them and they're making it look super cool, for a lot of the year, they're actually not pink. But even when they are, it's like a very industrial feel, and you're definitely not allowed to get in them. So anyone who takes those pictures is breaking the rules anyway. That's just definitely a case of like Instagram versus reality for sure. So number 3 on my list is just a given. You have to go see the capital of Yucatan, the amazing city of Merida. Now Merida is getting more and more popular. Big travel sites like Travel and Leisure have actually named it one of the best cities in the entire world to visit because it is just a stunning city. Personally, I've spent months living there just because it has so much of what makes Yucatan great all in one spot. So you have all the colonial architecture, you have almost 500 years of colonial history, but Merida itself was built on top of an ancient Maya city. They actually even used a lot of like the bricks and materials from the Maya structures that the colonizers like tore down to build some of the buildings that are in current day Merida. So definitely a screwed up history in that sense, but what's amazing about it is Maya culture in Merida is alive and well, and it's amazing. Like you can visit Maya markets and you can check out how they make hammocks and hats and things like that. You can purchase those things. The restaurants there in Merida are amazing. They have incredible museums, including a massive Maya museum, and it's just a very walkable city. It was very well laid out. They also have a lot of good street food in Merida and good farmers markets. Merida was also one of the most wealthy cities in the entire world at one point due to Heineken production. So you have a ton of mansions. When millionaires lived there from all over the world, they built these giant mansions all over the city. And there's more parts and elements to the story, but essentially the economy dropped on it. So a lot of these mansions just got completely abandoned, and now that's how they sit today. But others have been like converted into museums, even coffee shops. Starbucks is in one of the freaking mansions. You can even fly directly into Merida, but flights into Cancun are typically cheaper. You can get a rental car. There's not a lot of hills, so the roads are pretty nice and not very windy. But also there's really nice bus companies, like Audio is a huge one that you can just take directly from Cancun and Merida. It's like 4.5, 5-hour trip. And you can even break that up on the way with staying in Valladolid. I'm probably going to be butchering the pronunciation of a lot of these places, but I'll put the word on the screen so you know what I'm talking about. It's just because all this stuff is coming straight off my brain. I don't really rehearse these videos too much. So a lot of times I will mess a word up. I'll catch it when I'm editing it later, and by that point it's too late. And feel free to correct me in the comments. I actually like those comments, so give me hell in the comments about my pronunciation.
Step is like a foot.
Yeah.
It's a whole
Ooh,
foot.
this is intense.
So number 4 on my list is to check out as many of the ancient ruins of Maya cities that you can. Personally, I do recommend Chichen Itza. That's probably the one that's on most people's radar. It gets insanely busy. It gets crazy packed. All the tour buses come in and unload. Perks are getting up early. No one else is in front of the temple right now. There is Lauren. Kind of scale for size there. It's worth it just because of the scale to at least go check it out. It is freaking huge. It's also, of course, one of the new 7 wonders of the world, which, by the way, that's cool for us list checker travelers. That really is just marketing. That doesn't necessarily make it the best ruins to go visit. But Chichen Itza, yeah, it's more expensive, it gets crowded, but I still think it's worth it just for the scale. But my personal favorite was Ekbalam. Both of them are really close to Valladolid, but Ekbalam is actually older than Chichen Itza, and it doesn't get nearly as crowded, and it's a lot cheaper. The day we went, it was partially raining a bit off and on. Thanks so far about Ekbalam.
Oh, this place is gorgeous, and we have had it basically all to ourselves. There hasn't been that many people here.
And the cool thing about Ekbalam is you can actually climb up the structures, so that part of it was insane. It's like stepping into an Indiana Jones movie. Just climbing up these ancient temples and seeing all the scenery of the surrounding Yucatan jungle was absolutely amazing. Also, a quick note, Yucatan Peninsula in general has some really amazing trees, and you can see really cool examples of those at Ekbalam. Like there's some trees there that look like they have eyes in them. Some of the eyes look like they're crying. And they also have trees that have these giant spikes on them. So you can see those all over the peninsula, but Ekbalam definitely has some cool examples of that. Cool thing about the ancient Maya cities too is that a lot of them were built around cenotes or built close to cenotes because there are no rivers on the Yucatan Peninsula. That was their main water source. So next on the list is to check out at least one beach town in Yucatan. The beaches are really not as nice as the ones like in Quintana Roo, but for that reason, they're a lot less crowded. Personally, I really enjoyed going to Progreso, even though it is really touristy because cruise ships will dock there. But if you time your trip around that, it's super close to Merida. It's like 30 minutes away. They have a national park. You can take a boat to go visit. It's really like $5 to get in. And that national park has really good wildlife sighting opportunities. It also has multiple cenotes and walking trails. So that was really fun. And also Progreso has one of the world's longest piers that jets way out into the water so the cruise ships can dock because the water is really shallow there. And they've even added like pigs on the beach and stuff like that in that area. So Progreso is just a fun place to be with lots of restaurants, nightlife. So some of that tourism can be beneficial. Next on my list is another one that's close to Merida. Less than an hour away from Merida is a small town of Amun. And Amun is a crazy underrated spot to go check out some cenotes. It is literally surrounded by cenotes.
This place is the gem if you're looking for cenotes because we have been to so many today. What, like about 6? Which one was your favorite?
Gotta go. They're all amazing, first of all. Most of them were super laid back. We had them all to ourselves for the most part. But I gotta go with the first one we went to. Which one was that?
Same. It's Yash Bakutun.
Yash Bakutun.
That was the very first one we went to with the rope swing. Yeah. There was just something like extra magical about it. I like the semi-abierto, which is like semi-open cenotes, because I like to see the sky. When the sun hits the water, it's absolutely beautiful. Whenever you arrive here, whether it be bus, collectivo, there will be tons of tuk-tuk drivers. Now, we paid 200 pesos for our driver to take us to multiple cenotes.
We just spent an entire day exploring the cenotes of Amun, and we went to the most popular ones in the area, ranging all the way to one that was on private property that didn't even have a name, like way out in a cow pasture. And again, none of them were crowded, and some we had completely to ourselves. So totally different than the ones you'll visit in Quintana Roo, where they're really expensive to visit. Sometimes it's $20 to get in, and it's super crowded. There's hundreds of people in some of the cenotes there. Thanks largely to Instagram and vloggers like myself who won't shut up about it. So people are just flocking to a lot of the cenotes on Yucatan Peninsula. But you have to remember there's like 6,000 or something of these cenotes. So tons of them you'll have completely to yourself. A lot of them are not even accessible or they're off limits to tourists completely. But Amun kind of felt like a really nice middle ground to where you could visit some more off the grid cenotes, but they were easily accessible with the tuk-tuk drivers and things like that.
Okay, I cannot believe that we have this entire cenote to ourselves. We're the only 2 people in here, and it's totally serene. Like, I just can't believe it.
It's quiet in here. So it's definitely a really good way to cool down and get out of the intense heat of Yucatan Peninsula, because that's one thing for sure you're gonna notice when you go, if you haven't been, that it gets insanely hot. Last on my list is the really cool Pueblo Mágico of Izmal, aka the Yellow City. Now, a little backstory on Pueblo Mágicos if you're new here or new to travel in Mexico. Basically, that just means like magic town. The Mexican Tourism Board has given designations to a lot of towns across the country. Literally, the list has grown to well over 100 towns now that have been chosen for having like a certain thing that makes them special or a combination of things that makes them special. Be it like cultural significance, unique cuisine, historical significance, natural beauty, or a mixture of all those. And we've never personally been let down by Pueblo Mágico. They really are incredible places. And they're meant to get people to sort of not just go to Cancun and Mexico City and raise awareness about the other really cool attractions and places you can visit in Mexico. It has worked. Lots of vloggers and people online will be talking about these Pueblo Mágicos 24/7. And it's gotten us to go to places that wouldn't have been on our radar before. So Izmal is not far from Merida. It's easy to get to, but so much of the city is painted in yellow. You just have these golden hues all over, especially like at golden hour when the sun is setting or rising. And there's not a real set in stone story as to why that is. There's different theories about why it's yellow, but no one can really seem to agree 100% on why the whole town is yellow. So that in itself already makes Izmal so worth the trip. Like, it's so unique in the entire world. But also Izmal is just incredibly charming. It's colonial. There's multiple ruins of Maya structures right in the town you can go explore. So I recommend taking a bus or driving into Izmal. and just eating your way around town and searching your way around town. And make sure you bring your camera, because the videography and photography you can get in Izmal is really one of a kind with those yellow hues. So that is it, guys. That's my list. I wanted to keep it pretty brief. Make sure if you visited Yucatan, hop in the comments, tell me what I missed, what's your favorite spots. You can even throw in recommendations for the whole peninsula, because again, I think it's a really good idea to see as much of it as you possibly can. The more time you have, definitely hop around the peninsula, check out the different states, even cross the border into Belize or Guatemala. That's super fun to do. It really is insane how much of a well-rounded vacation and trip you can have to the Yucatan Peninsula. Just the amount of different things to do between culture, culinary, history, adventure, relaxing on the beach. All of it is all really in one small spot. It's easy to get from one spot to the next. So it is really one of my top recommendations for people who are just getting into travel for the first time. I'm like, yeah, go fly into Cancun, rent a car, check out everything the peninsula has to offer. It's gonna blow your mind. It's really remarkable. If you did enjoy the video and you learned something, I really would appreciate it if you would subscribe. That definitely helps a lot. But until next time, guys, I will see you out there. Safe travels.